Hello.
Hey,
Looking very clean for having just surfaced the spoil board.
I just work in an office.
Did you get a haircut?
Got my hairs cut. It gets a little too shaggy
Nice.
on the side. It starts to look real skanky to me.
Yeah, me too.
It's like if it gets long enough, then it's fine, but it's also too warm for that hair.
Once more with feeling. 3, 2, 1.
I think that worked.
Good morning.
Morning.
Yeah.
We should start saying good day.
Good day. What's happening in Portland?
Portland. I've been shipping lots of dust boots. It's been very rewarding.
Fantastic.
I don't know how many listeners, but if so, I appreciate it. It's been had a moment last week. Just honestly kind of like mildly emotional. Felt like we, between winning finally a couple decent sized job shop jobs, and then we just kind of have had a continuous order stream of dust boots. And it's finally like, I guess I could relate it as saying, not quite, I don't feel like this is the truth, but we made it kind of in a sense, or like we finally have made it over a little bit of a hump where it's just been so tough, so lean income wise that I saw a little bit of light there, which is cool. It's been nice.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah.
Really good.
I mean, people from Australia buy 2 of them from you. It's very good. Who would do that?
Yeah, it was great to get our second baby pants in the door this week. And in a week that I got to install it and play with it too.
Yeah.
Win-win.
That one seemed a little easier. That machine has less complication to it, potentially.
It was a very simple exchange.
Yeah.
Just 4 bolts to take off the existing hood, which is good actually, because I reckon I might still have a use for the stock foot at times on that machine.
Yeah.
We occasionally use it as a pressure foot. We put springs in it.
Oh, yeah, that's super cool.
Have it sort of push down as it's riding hard on the surface. So we might still find a use for that application. But yeah, it was nice because it was such a quick change operation. It means that it's not unfeasible to swap it back if we're running a whole lot of really thin stock or warped panels or something. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. It's pretty cool.
I did immediately start unbolting the spindle nose, and kind of as I was fitting it, I was just started to think about like, oh, could you just have some little like pressure foot roller that just bolts in under here that you can pull in and out. Something that I've toyed with a bit, that acoustic panel product that we cut that I sent you a video
Yeah,
of.
oh my word. Looks like ramen noodles.
The wood wool, that stuff's really hard to contain because of how aggressive the material removal rate is. But it also, that's a product that really benefits from a pressure foot. I know the factory in Sweden that does it, they've got this funky setup where they've got carpet instead of it, because vacuum hold down does nothing because it's so porous. So they've got carpet on the bed for like grip, sheer grip. And then they've got like a pressure foot rollers, which I think there's a router manufacturer in the States. I can't remember what they're called, that does like crazy pressure foot high-speed machines.
Oh, God, what are they? It's the new one that Izzy Swan's a part of, at least. I've seen that. I don't remember what their name is, Phoenix, or they're blue.
Yeah, those pressure rollers look cool.
Yeah, I frankly thought they were a little silly when I first saw them. I thought, don't know why you'd want that. It looks like it would break really easily. But, as you describe it, there are things that are just super hard to cut and hold down. And as we've always joked, the vacuum is the magic solution for so many easy ways to work hold. But there's also things that are just super hard to work hold that don't work at all like that. So
yeah. And I think like the feed rates that they promote on some of those machines are just bonkers. Like they're pushing a 1/2 inch or 1 inch hogger flat out. If you're building caravans and stuff in high volume.
The sideways tool pressure, lateral tool pressure, and those kind of things are absurd.
Yeah, I remember the shock and awe when I first discovered that a 1/2 inch carbide tool was actually deflecting under tool pressure.
Oh my God, yeah.
What? How's that possible?
For a long time, our primary compression tool was like a 1/4 inch, which is just a little bit more than 6 mil. And it whipped so much. It always whips. And so we kept having to space our parts farther and farther. We'd still get like defects on sides. So you have the same spindle, I think. But because we're only using a 5 horsepower spindle, you can't really go to like even the 3/8 is a little bit too much sometimes to actually cut at the right feed rates and like plywood. So the tool we use primarily is an 8mm compression because it's just like the perfect middle ground.
Interesting.
Close to 5/16. And yeah, it works great. I love that tool, especially for the 5 horsepower.
I really don't like that tool, the 8mm.
You don't?
It's no, I find it a really squealy. Maybe we've just never got it right, but I find it a really squealy tool.
Well, compared to a 6, right? Like
Oh yeah, I don't touch sixes unless I have to. Although John did order a 5 mil compressor recently, which he's been using on certain jobs just to get it in there on small parts. But I think it's like 3 flute 5 mil is impressive. But 9.5 or 3/8 has always been our sweet spot for the compression cutters. But may I ask what chip load you're running on an 8mm tool?
Oh God. This is where we're going to get into that conversion nightmare. It's 18,500 RPMs at 550 inches a minute. So don't know what that is.
Yeah, okay.
We usually run under the suggested feed rates of what Vortex recommends. They're usually very aggressive, and we just can't push them fast enough with the tool.
How many flutes?
2.
What was your RPM?
18.5.
Sheesh. Oh, okay. 0.37 mil feed per tube.
It's funny because it's like those numbers, I'm sure the same to you. It's like they mean nothing to me. It's like I'm telling like my wife, like, yeah, the feed per tooth is 3 thou. And she's like, what are you talking about?
So you're running a 0.37 feed per tooth. I think I would run a 0.4 to 0.5 feed per tooth. So it's not dissimilar.
The other reason why we've always used smaller compression tools is the spindle just can't seemingly handle a whole lot more, but it's probably more that the width needed between parts is less, and that exposes less vacuum. And since we have basically like the minimum required vacuum for a 4x8 machine, like the more that it's exposed, the more challenge there is to it. So
because you got those hair dryers as vacuum pumps.
Oh man, I've always wanted to do this really interesting project. It's like, especially one of the guys that worked for us for a while would always, spray yourself off when you're kind of dusty at the end of the day with compressed air. He would do it pretty extensively. And I was always like, man, we should make like, basically it'd be using the same kind of motors, but like a little ring where you'd walk through and it would just spray you off.
Just a little, quarantine booth as you exit the shop. Just,
yep. It's like a vacuum chamber you go through.
Next.
Car
wash.
Take your what do they call those? Like contagious diseases shell off.
Yeah. Well, be careful dusting yourself down, kids. Don't inject yourself with compressed air.
Ugh.
It'll mess you up.
Steam will do that. Yeah.
Nice to get a little shout out from the Pearson Media Department.
Yeah. Did they shout it out somewhere, or did it just that comment?
Just what you sent me on Slack.
Oh, yeah. I was curious if he was going to do like some post about it, but I think he was just kind of being nice.
I laughed when I saw this note in there the other night. I did it. What did you do?
I saw it this morning and I couldn't remember what I did. And then I remembered what I did. I was like, shit, I didn't want to spoil the surprise if you saw it earlier. Then I was like, well, if I can't remember what it means, it's not a surprise.
You got to leave coded messages in there.
No, I mean, as we're talking about, I did it and bought the Pearson pallet system.
You did it?
Yeah, it's the peer pressure, the reverse peer pressure I wanted.
Happy to oblige.
Yeah. It's just, it's a little bit biting off a little more than I think I probably should chew at the moment, but kind of on the heels of feeling like, okay, we're having some decent sales with dust boots and things are going all right. Like, if we can just get these pedestals off. And my thought was, instead of trying to do setups for my custom version of basically making pallets that screw down, I might as well just skip that phase and not invest all the time making the fixture and then having to remake it later when we need something different. And Jay had also replied via email pretty nicely, pretty quickly, and answered basically all my concerns of like, I wanted to put a vise on, but I needed to turn the whole thing sideways in the middle so it fits. And that way it sticks off like a lot because it's like perpendicular orientation. And he's like, he recommended the right size pallet and for the vise we have. And he's like, I don't have any concerns that it's going to be a problem because all the energy transfer goes straight through the center of the back jaw in his experience. So that also just made me feel like, all right, well, like it's going to save so much time just to switch between even like the 2 parts we make for this one job, that it also kind of freed me up mentally to think about like it not just being a production machine potentially if we do want to do some type of odd job with it, that I don't have to do any tear down necessarily because those pallets repeat so nicely.
Yeah, well, it's a 0-point fixture system, right?
I think you could call it that. Yeah, basically. Yeah, it's supposed to repeat within repeatable. 3/10, which is crazy.
Yeah, I don't know what that is.
It's a
Sounds
lot.
Good.
A little.
A little. I mean,
0.0076 millimeters.
oh, lordy. That's little.
Mm-hmm.
To a guy that chops wood for a living, that's little. I mean, you're in, yeah, like what a great place to start if you're starting to think about pallets, like investing in that system
Mm-hmm.
as your build, jumping off point, your base point.
Yeah.
Making things build up that rather than kind of going down a path and then, Grimsmo has done of like getting to a point where he's scrapping all these old Norseman pallets and is coming back and just rebuilding them all on 0-point systems. And
What's funny is he uses a lot of, I watched an old video of his, I think because I was searching so much to watch videos on pro pallets and Pearson stuff that just to kind of sink myself into making fixtures and all that. And now looking at the pro pallets, that one of his videos came up from like 5 or 7 years ago. And he was just putting on a mini pallet system from Pearson and like putting it into a space that was like small on the back of his table. And he already had all these others. And I was just thinking to myself, I was like, thinking how he's just scrapping the ones that I'm just about to like start making. I was like, I'm that far behind, am I?
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, I am feeling more and more like some form of a capable machinist, though. Like, it looks pretty basic, but the only thing I didn't do, I can't find a freaking rigid tap collet for this 8 millimeter, which is these holes here. But so I did those by hand. But the rest of it came off the machine. Bottom base plate like perfectly out of the vise. So
looks amazing.
Yeah,
great surface finish.
It's looking really nice.
Even on this potato cam,
the potato cam's looking nice. Right. So this is as large as I can make basically in the fixturing I currently have. Otherwise, it just doesn't hang out in the vise. So the pallets are supposed to arrive Friday, and then I'm off to the races trying to figure out how to make all that work.
Awesome, sounds fun. What do you do about finishing those parts? Do you just leave them naked?
I think I've had a few people over the time since we've talked about putting those out as a product ask and want like in messaging like them to be anodized. But
yeah, right.
To start out, and I will probably just clean them out of the coolant.
Yep.
Clean them up, and I mean the surface finishes are, in my experience anyway, really nice. So we like how it looks on our machine. The kind of like machined aluminum. It looks nice. It looks like a machine that makes other things should look, in my opinion. And yeah, somewhere down the road, maybe if we have enough interest, we may do some anodization, but outsource that because that's a whole thing that I don't understand.
Oh, totally. Yeah. Look, I understand that anodizing makes stuff harder, right? Hardens the surface somehow. But at the same time, it's a huge chunk of aluminium. It's not going anywhere.
No, for sure. And it's not going to like oxidize or rust or really anything.
No.
All of a fixture, all the stuff we're putting with it, stainless steel, so it should last a good long time.
So you got the pedestal ATC rack thing coming
as soon as possible.
You got dust boots. What about the duck quack quack?
Duck quack quack. It's basically ready to sell. So which you could probably relate to, and all the more reason I need to push this stuff out is I am just currently working on transitioning to Shopify. I wanted to stop all new things going on to our stupid Squarespace e-commerce because it's so the more, once I commit mentally to like, this is a bad idea, it's like I just get more and more frustrated with it. I'm like, yeah, okay. This doesn't work. And so the more, like I was chatting with Jay about it, they've actually seemingly intentionally made it difficult to export your products from Squarespace. Like it only exports a small blurb of the whole long bit of their description, basically. So I have to rebuild all the product pages. So every new thing I make over there just represents a ton more work to transition. So my goal was to launch those with the new Shopify page or website. So I'm feeling good about it. It's going all right. Kind of have to get into the vibe of like making those kind of things, I guess. I'm not just like immediately like ready to make web pages all the time. It's no router.
Yeah, I was thinking about your situation last night with that, of remembering when we did our big sort of rebuild from Magento into Shopify. And again, then we transitioned to Shopify 2.0. There's this sort of natural attrition that happens, I find, of what are the priorities that we need to get over to the new site and get live immediately.
Yes.
And then I think it's actually a really positive thing of what gets left behind. That's been my experience anyway.
True.
Cool, these are the priorities in the moment. Let's get all of that happening. But then you just naturally either don't get back and finish all the other little bits and bobs. But the positive side of that is you're actually sort of focusing the business, whether you intend to or not. It's kind of deleting some of the old redundant stuff.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a pity to lose some of those pages because maybe they'd be nice in an archive somewhere. But at the same time, it's, you know, it's moving forward and focusing your outputs and what you present to the world, which I think is positive.
I used to be a lot more precious with, I think it's just the design school thing, honestly. I used to be a lot more precious with like, I spent all this time on this website design, especially with the NACPRO web pages for so long, which is funny because let's just like represent so much work that didn't like do as much as I wanted it to over that time period. And I probably will do the same. It's a good, you reminded me. I will use like either a website or like an extension on Chrome and do a full page screenshot and then just like save those in Google Drive. It's like good enough for me. Like I can go back and look at it. I totally know what you mean though. What I'm just so excited about all the potential. To me, it's like representing a huge potential into like really formalizing this being a big part of our business now, rather than when I first made the Squarespace site, it was like a side project. And that was in 2017. And I was like, maybe this Portland CNC thing will be something. And then when I had the thought to like sell a product, which I think were mostly digital things, it was like, whoa, Squarespace has commerce. All right. And it was just kind of like accidental. And I always thought it looked kind of crappy, honestly, the commerce stuff. So just like I was telling you, I think via message that like one of the stupid things I'm excited about that's so simple is we can very, very simply add more like international countries to ship to on Shopify because they do all the automated pricing of shipping for you. Like I don't have to go do research. Like right now I have to basically cover myself to make sure that when we ship something to New Zealand, it's not costing me $100 extra or something. Because you want to know a silly example is shipping to you where you are versus literally, I think Melbourne itself is like 50 more dollars.
Ah, right.
And how do I know that? Like, you know,
was that calculated in checkout when we bought the dust boot?
It's not calculated at all. I just had to go look those up. That's what's crazy about it right now is I'm kind of just, you have to do so much of your own work.
Oh, no.
And as I'm setting up the Shopify, I just was like throwing new countries. I was like, oh, what about Switzerland?
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
Yeah, I think you guys have got it pretty good with Shopify and like your compatible carriers and stuff like that. Like we're quite limited here with who we can integrate.
Sure.
Whereas when I look in the options, it's like all these amazing options, but they're all like US, Canada, JAMU.
Yeah. Are you considering international sales at all?
Look, there's some conversations happening at the moment. I think maybe in part due to this podcast, I had, I think, 3 requests in as many weeks for manufacturers in the US who are interested in distributing or licensing like butter products.
Oh.
These conversations have come up in the past from time to time, and I'm always interested in entertaining the question and having a chat. So I tend to jump on a Zoom call and have a chat with these people and just suss them out, see what the vibe's like, what the alignment's like, and also just talk through it's quite complex, like talk through how the hell that might work. Anyway, I had one call maybe last week, which was by far the most positive of these calls that I've had. And yeah, I think there's potential there. I don't want to ship anything overseas. I don't believe furniture should be shipped internationally. I'm happy to buy a little lightweight dust boot, but I like to not end up in a spot where we're shipping plywood.
Yeah.
But I think there is potential there for some sort of US distribution where we take the orders and our website does all the work and then someone stateside fulfills them in local materials.
Yeah.
But then there's all sorts. Whoa. Sorry, I just got deafened by a message. But then there's also just like little challenges. Someone over there is going to be manufacturing them in, say, Kitaparts, for example, in different plywood, different dowel. You've then got country-dependent variants on the website. And like, I think you probably want to just spin up a whole another website just so it's not as confusing for the 2 different audiences. But I don't know.
I'm laughing mostly because I'm imagining them all being in imperial measurements over here.
Well, thankfully, pretty much everything here is just imperial in metric disguise. Wouldn't be too hard.
I'm imagining a superhero that's like, it's just a unit machine and he's Imperial and disguised in a metric cloak.
There's a brief for Dali.
Yes.
Very good. Yeah.
Yeah. Over the years, I've had more different opinions about international selling. When we first did the Kickstarter, you couldn't control in 2011 where your backers were from. And
Oh, yeah.
luckily, I had a bunch of people approach me, which was kind of cool at the time. Maybe it was a half dozen or so, which is a lot. It felt like about, oh, we want to sell these in Europe. We want to sell these in the Philippines. I think somebody from Malaysia bought hundreds of them. Luckily approached me about it and it didn't just do it, but I I definitely took a lot of boxes to FedEx that went to Malaysia, and I was so afraid that it was going to be like some scam or something because I just had no experience with international business like that. And I learned a lot about basically not wanting to do that kind of thing. And it used to be so much more complicated because there wasn't simple ways to calculate prices for all this stuff. And there'd Shopify, like, at least at that time, there was no like auto pricing, and countries had all these rules about like, you can't ship shoes to this place because it's got a certain tariff. Yeah, lately it's been interesting, especially I think honestly, your influence has helped a lot with like your corner of the world where we've sold dust boots over there. And I would have never thought otherwise. I probably honestly to like think, oh, we could be big in Australia. Like,
yeah, totally.
It's got to be your influence. Honestly, it's got to be that. And I'm appreciative of everybody that's ordered.
Yeah. I think part of that is we're kind of limited here in terms of, I don't know how best to describe this, like small scale custom tool makers is not really a thing. Like I look at some of the Americans I follow, like Izzy Swan is a good example.
Yeah.
Someone with big social media presence who's making cool mods, cool tools for makers. I feel like that's really limited here. So the fact that you're doing this and then we've got a bit of a mixed audience because of, our relationship. Yeah. It does, open that up, which is cool. Which leads me to the one thing that I would change in your business.
That's a good segue.
Off the back of
You'd fire me.
The natural attrition of rebuilding a website. And this is a bit bold because it's a one thing and it's not my call. But
I'm scared. Oh boy.
I would reduce your offering and focus dramatically. If I was called in to run PDX, I think I'd go hard on this tool mod trajectory and scale back a lot of the other areas.
I can't say I can argue with that, really. I mean, send me back a month and a half when we just thought about 2 months ago when we were starting to think about selling dust boots or like putting them public. I would have said you're maybe crazy because of how much time and effort I put into like the NACWAL thing. And it's really interesting you bring that up too, because I wrote this down, but we've tried to trademark NAC, the word, kind of on advice of a colleague or a local friend here. And it costs a lot of money to even do the research on it. And I just got word today that it didn't go through. And which was likely. It was likely that it wasn't going to go through the first time. And there's confusion with other brands. They think that it's a surname more than it is a brand, which is like, I've never heard of anybody named NAC. And so anyway, I've got to spend roughly $3,000 more if I want the lawyers to even write letters back and try to get it to pass again. And I'm just like, I don't want to continue spending money on this at this point. But I've also spent so much. The sunk cost fallacy is heavy with this. It's like we've spent well over 10 grand to like research into like patentability of this, trademarking, like and now with the success of the PDX CNC stuff that has nothing to do with that, I'm like, do I continue sinking money into this? But like not to segue too much, but it's just funny you brought that up because it just happened this morning.
Wow.
No, I think it's a good thought for sure. I don't know how to. Like, if I have to dig into that, do I just stop working and thinking about NACWAL altogether? Or my thought was I was putting it on hold till I get back to like the time when all the other products are kind of rolling, right? With like the dust boot, the ATC thing. And I have time to do the R&D on that again where it makes sense. But it also could just never be as good of a product. So
I don't know that you have to think about whether it's you're canning it or not. Like I would put it on hold, really knuckle down and focus on this new offering, developing those products, but also developing the marketing and the comms around it. Because I can relate to a point, and like it's confusing offering two different things. Like it's confusing for us sort of offering custom work, but also trying to push product. And that's within one brand, like you're running two brands.
Sort of.
But there is a lack of clarity. There is a lack of clarity there. Like I think when we bought that second dust boot, I saw one of the auto emails came with Knack branding on it, and I was like, "Oh, hang on,
did it really?"
Yeah. And so
okay,
I'll pull that up and screenshot it for you. But like I think that's a real challenge for your sort of storytelling and all your customer journey. Imagine if you put all your energy into this one avenue, what could be possible in like 12 months or something.
No, I agree.
And it's not to say that you build that up and get it stable and then revisit Knack and the wall and all of those things. I think, we're not killing it off. I think.
Yeah. I think it's worth
there's just great potential there.
It's worth discussing. I think that's one of the harder things. And everybody says this to death. It's not a new thought, but I remember reading the Steve Jobs first autobiography. And I think he said in that, or it's probably in other things, he said at one point, basically, that, it was when the iPhone came out and he, some reporter asked him, like, isn't this going to cannibalize your iPod sales? And he was like, I'd rather do it myself. Like I'd rather kill off that thing myself. Not that what I'm doing is killing off that, but it's like, basically, you got to always be willing to kill one of your darlings, right? It's like without that, it's not gutsiness. Without the idea of, each one of these things, like we were talking about last week, it's like I make decisions too emotionally often about business, but it's like without you bringing that up very poignantly, I may continue to think like these are both good ideas when, even the math of it's currently like, well, one is selling, and is a business solution. The other is still hard to describe.
Yeah.
It's very poignant at this point. I don't regret it. Somebody here said, setting off into the Knack product making thing was, it was kind of during when the patent thoughts were potentially killing some of the features that we thought were great and simplified the product of the Knack wall. And somebody said, I'm not worried about this at all, because even if we don't continue this, what I'm pretty proud of this. What had happened was we had converted ourselves from R&Ding everybody else's things every day with job shop work to like we were solving problems so fast with product problems, and that person was like, we'll figure out what's next. And I think we did that with being able to make the dust boot probably faster than I think we probably should have otherwise if we were just only doing job shop work, because it was like we're in this mode of making products now. So anyway,
certainly not. I don't think you've lost anything by putting that on hold, as you say, like that being in that space and that skill development of becoming more efficient at product development. It's all a win.
Yeah.
The trademarking and protection stuff is a really funny area. I've always been of the opinion of it's not worth it. Let's put our energy into creating new and better things rather than trying to protect our old ideas and just use our sort of what's the expression, social capital, by putting our ideas out into the world and kind of owning them in our audience and on our platforms.
Yeah.
And then maybe one day we'll run into trouble and have something sort of ripped off or copied, but I would rather then go, cool, what's next? Rather than kind of protect it. The exception to that, I think, is, speaking of darlings, is like I feel most protective about Kidder parts, I think, because of how much energy I've put into that. So I think I would find that very challenging if and when, it's probably a when, that gets challenged.
I don't know how it is there, but if I put it in this framework, and the person that pushed me to look into patentability and trademarking when we were setting off, and all I could think was we were spending so much time and effort trying to make that be a product that I don't know if I heard it on a podcast or something, but it was just basically all I could think about after that was if one of the primary utility functionalities of the wall turned out to be patented and we had sunk godly amounts of money into like actually producing them and then had to stop. It's like, what if one of the main features, like how it threads together, right? Or something. It's like, you'll probably find a solution around it, but if you had sunk, what if you had 3 pencil sharpeners and all your machines were set up to like run this thing super efficiently and then stop and you've sunk all your, it's just, I don't know. It doesn't feel like there's a right choice at this point for like, maybe more you're a little bit farther ahead and maybe I shouldn't have spent the money on it, but we definitely found stuff that would have been a problem if we had gotten big enough. So
yeah, interesting. Okay. Yeah.
Or, the lawyers did. We didn't.
Yeah. Well, Don, you know what time it is.
It's coffee time.
You got it.
I always enjoy this. If I reverse that sound, it's going to sound like you're in the bathroom.
I always think that. What's Ricky cutting?
Oh, we're cutting some pricey acrylic for a customer. I think he's cutting it, or he was going to cut it. I'm trying to think. I didn't spend a lot of time thinking about that in advance, but trying to think what I would change about your business. But mostly, I think I'm jealous. I'm not jealous, and I don't mean that in like a negative way. I appreciate your business. I feel like you're like the older brother version of like what I hope my business can be at times. So it's like hard for me to imagine like how I would change it in a certain way, because it's like I would like to do a lot of the things you guys are doing with different aspects. So I don't know if I have an item to change. Don't know. You're doing everything right.
Thank you. I'll take it.
Yeah.
Rather than try and argue with you.
I'll say mine can be next week if I think of something.
Okay. Yeah, I think off the back of my blues last week, it was perfect timing. And it hadn't even occurred to me as I was chatting last week, but John has been away this week, taking a break. I got to be on the tools and it was so good. Unfortunately, it's only a 3-day week here. So it's a public holiday today and tomorrow. I only got three glorious days, but damn, it was good. Couldn't wipe the smile off my face.
You took a selfie with your Maso controller. Look at my girlfriend.
Yeah, it's just so good. But running parts, but also just being back in that headspace of like, because I knew it was temporary. I didn't want to just run production for a few days and then, without sort of thinking critically about it. So it was this lovely balance of running production, but also having an opportunity to question some processes and legacy stuff. Like you said last week, like boss for a day.
Yeah.
Machinist for a day. Not, absolutely not sort of taking anything away from what John's been doing, but sort of looking at, cool, where are our processes at now? Where have we improved? And what are we still doing the old way, or like, where is there still room for improvement? So that was a really lovely space to be in. And just rethinking a few little things of cool, like that Woodwall stuff, like the messy acoustic panel. We have always programmed that in EnRoute, which is like equivalent of VCarve 2D cam.
Yep.
And we've pretty much entirely retired EnRoute now. So I had the opportunity to make new files for those parts in Fusion and just rethink the setup of that job. And like,
you'd be like hook and loop on the bottom where it's like Velcro.
Sure. It's hook and loop.
TM.
But yeah, that was great fun.
Yeah, it looked good. Hey, when I don't know if it was a story or something, maybe you sent me a message. You're like, I'm on the tools. And I was like, oh, you traded John. That was fast. Like, he did the boss for a day, like instantly. I didn't even think, it's like one of those things where you chat about something and you think like, well, that's fanciful. Maybe one of us will do that someday. And then you were just like doing it, but it just happened to be a vacation.
For the record, I really like that idea. I think there's something in that job swap.
I'm always trying to imagine what the person that would be trading into your position would do though. Like, how do you set that up?
Right. Well, in Airtable, they would go to our SOPs.
I thought that was it. In Airtable. You'd set it up in Airtable.
Yeah, that was the main answer. No, they would go to our SOPs and they would go to tasks by role, director, gem.
Yeah.
And they would see all my daily tasks, weekly tasks, quarterly tasks as required, and see, the missing information which I haven't backfilled yet.
That's funny.
But I think there's potential to get to a point where, this is what we're working towards, is that every role, so not person, is like fully documented in our SOPs, so that whether it's boss for a day or whether it's hiring a new person, like there's just like a full system
Yeah.
that role that someone can drop into and have hopefully everything they need to do the job. And it's getting easier and easier. So Sarah, our business manager, was away for almost 2 weeks recently. And so Jay and I were covering her position. Jay did most of it, but it was just, when it's well documented, gosh, it's so easy.
That is always
people.
amazing. It's like, we don't have rules like that necessarily. So it's always like the things that are well documented are usually like machine related.
Yeah.
As I've figured stuff out, we've figured stuff out on the YCM. It goes in immediately into Freshdesk so that I don't forget it. Yeah. No, that's nice.
I'm excited about that. I think Jay turned on a Freshdesk trial this week.
Oh, I'm a little distracted. We have a truck here with 3 sheets. I'm trying to figure out if Ricky is going to handle it or not.
Cool. I'm happy to wait.
Let me ask him real quick.
Yep. I wish I had a wig to put on and just transform while Justin's away. Why don't I have a wig in here? Makita inflatable jacket. That's not going to work.
I can just hear you talking in my ears.
Talking.
I could hear you be talking to Ricky and inflatable somethings.
Damn, I'd forgotten that you could hear me. Okay.
No.
Back on the air. Did you hear about the Patagonia thing?
Yeah.
The sale? Far out. What a move.
Right.
Very impressed. I've been inspired by them. While it feels weird to say that I'm inspired by a clothing brand, that's kind of a gross thought. But at the same time, they got me onto the 1% for the planet scheme many years ago.
Yeah.
Or onto that concept. And for, 3 years or so now, we've been doing that 1% of revenue. So yeah, I've always liked kind of their ethos and their company culture in terms of what they're trying to do. So yeah, seeing that move last week or whenever it was about them, the founder selling off the company into a whatever it's called,
trust,
a protection
non-profit trust thing.
Yeah, incredible move, and just kind of a really nice reminder of what's possible in the face of capitalism.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Very cool.
It was really ironic timing. I have a friend that moved from Portland and actually went to work for Patagonia for a while, and in one of their departments. This is a pretty small company. I just happened to see him again, like the same day or the day after that announcement happened, and he doesn't work for them anymore. But I was asking him a couple questions, like basically I just was like, so is this all, what do you think of this? Is this on the up and up? Like, is there any like weird side angle to this? Or unfortunately, too often, maybe in America, that there's always some angle on like, we're still making billions on this donation. But he says it's completely genuine, and the founder is exactly what he's like made to be in articles, and his family in particular. He said the same thing the article did, which I trust him, was saying that they believe that billionaires are a policy error, basically, and they never wanted to be billionaires, and they really technically weren't, but they were a privately owned company, so they could do whatever they wanted in the end, which is so unique in America that they never went public to make more money, or they didn't have enough money at some point and needed it. But I think what's interesting, like you said, is it sets a new precedent, honestly, of like what you can do and how something can transition, so that we were joking, like they didn't get bought by North Face and turn into like a sorority sweatshirt company. Not that they're maybe the worst example, but like it's just corporate greed is everywhere.
Yeah.
On a lighter note, I don't know if I understand this.
This is, like you said before, we want to leave notes, but we don't want them to be too explanatory.
That's good. You used a nice coding. I don't understand it at all. Mine was just 3 words.
We've got a gap, as you know, in Fusion detailing, and a bit torn as to the best way to fill that gap, whether to find someone young and moldable and just teach them basically from scratch in terms of how we drive Fusion and how to use our templates and get the job done, or to try and find someone a bit more senior, a bit more experienced, who can just kind of drop in with very minimal training. I feel like, without having sort of gone out and talked to too many people, I feel like Fusion as a software package is relatively young. Like it's only sort of coming through the universities now, more
7 or 8
recently.
years old, I think.
Yeah. So like there's maybe some outliers like us who have worked in their own business and, are self-taught. definitely a big self-taught community of Fusion users. But in terms of people who have actually been trained in it, I feel like it's still a fairly small pool. So yeah, I don't know. I kind of just want to do the thing of like putting a post up on Instagram and saying, hey, anyone out there, like hypothetically, would
Remote?
you want to come to Castlemaine? And remote might be an option, but I feel like depends who it is. But
Yeah.
we'd love to have someone here on site in the workshop, ideally. And, maybe a shout out would sort of weed out some people. Some people might sort of come out of the woodwork and find us and chat to us. But at the same time, I feel compelled to do the process properly and like write a PD first and work out exactly what we want and upload that to an employment website, blah, blah, blah. Don't know.
Be truthful. You just want to put it out there and hire the first person you see.
I really do.
So do I. I might have more experience than you in this, potentially, which is weird. I've hired, 4 people now that have basically all used Fusion. Like, there's really nobody that's ever worked here that hasn't used Fusion. And it was just a big belief for how small we were at the time that Ricky was the perfect example, honestly. Everybody else had some experience with CAD software, and Ricky had only used, to my knowledge, only maybe some other weird software, but he used Illustrator. What is happening over here? Do you have an animal down below you?
The scared is gonna explode.
What?
Under my desk. Don't mind me. Sorry for interrupting. Ricky, the illustrator.
You're just suddenly like, oh god. But without you saying that, it just looked like something was biting your ankles, which I believe in Australia. There's weird animals there.
Oh yeah.
Dangerous things.
Ricky illustrator.
Ricky was one of the best examples of this, I think. And I've had different versions of. Basically, nobody came in knowing Fusion very well because it's new. But one guy named Alex went to school, knew SolidWorks really well. He picked it up. He picked up Fusion within maybe a week and a half of working here. Just like instantly transitioned and turned out to be far better than me. Like, he made all of the parameter formulas for how to make the knack wall in a couple weeks. Cool. And then he had to teach me how to do it. And I was like, oh, maybe I'll figure this out. Before he left, he wrote a really nice guide on how to make and customize them, because we were all just kind of staring at him like, hey, can you make another of those? Because we can't figure out how to make another file. So I think it's been wildly successful from my experience of training people into it. Ricky had no experience in anything like that, really. He used Illustrator and then output to mostly 2D vector style, DXS or SVGs, and then would set up pretty simple cam for his Shipoko at home or his other job. I forget what he used, but it was nothing like Fusion, and which is honestly, it's totally a good reason why I will go back to the same kind of well of the same kind of person. He's so excited to learn that from day one, I remember in the interview, he said, I will learn how to do 3D machining. That was the thing he was really after. And I was like, oh, well, we can do that. We can definitely do that. And he's gone from, maybe opening Fusion when he was interviewing to he's making parametric models that are on our website that you can download right now. Yeah, it's taken a bit of time, but I guess it depends. If I go back to your question, it's how soon do you need this to be useful to you, this person and their skill set?
Yeah, both Josh and I would be the ones training this new person. And we're both pretty time limited. So that whilst I'd love to take someone from scratch, I don't know that we have time in the period that we need the role sort of fleshed out and filled to do that. But yeah.
Are there many good what we call them technical schools here, community colleges or that do training on vocational skills like CAD and CAM around?
No.
Is that not a thing in Australia or just not near you?
No, I don't know the backstory, but I think a lot of the technical schools were canned.
Were they public?
In the past. Yeah, government.
Interesting.
Technical schools. And I think there's been now we've got a massive shortage in trades.
Same. And
now I think the current government is trying to reinstate and refund a lot of that sort of training to get trades back again. So it's just that classic cycle. But yeah, no, I'm not aware of any training program in other than like industrial design or product design engineering at university, where they'll have semester in Fusion or something.
Yeah.
I'm not aware of any sort of training program.
Well, I know what you have to do. You have to start a school.
Start an academy.
Yeah.
Yep. Diversify.
The Butter Academy.
Yeah.
And people will always be confused. They're like, are you making butter? Learning how to make butter there? Dairy products? What's interesting about, I went to university, but what I've learned, I feel like maybe the understanding in America, community colleges, technical schools are like the most successful type of schooling in America.
Wow.
Like,
cool.
From my perspective, they're profitable. They're very low cost for the people going. And they're speedy and fast. They teach you what you need to know. And for the largest part, I don't think they have any government funding, which is just like wild that all that exists in one thing and so many different versions of it. And they're all seemingly very successful. It's very weird. I don't understand, because everything else like that would be very expensive because somebody would be taking advantage of that situation financially to be a billionaire, right? I don't understand, but I'm all for them. I've communicated a little bit with the couple local ones, and I've always tried. You've run into the same thing. I'm always trying to hire, for the longest time, somebody that would run a CNC router and work with wood. And every one of the programs, there's no wood programs for CNC. They're always like, well, we teach Haas lathe and Haas mills, so maybe somebody has some idea about that or has done woodworking in their garage growing up. And I'm like, that's not really like quite the same thing. If you want somebody to just come in and know it, but they're always very receptive to discussing it. Not that that's helpful for you.
No, it's a pretty unique skill set here too, I think.
Yeah.
There's people that have ended up with that skill set, but they're not very common, and half of them have already worked at butter.
Internship. This is why I think like Saunders' program with the internship, having students in is so smart, because it's like, they're getting great experience. You're not fully committed to an employee, so it's part-time. They're kind of like a full-time employee. Like, you're not like hand-holding them necessarily. And then you either can hire them full-time if they're great, or they continue on with their education or something. It's like,
they go back. Yeah.
So nice. I wish I could find a way to make that work here.
Yeah, we need to do more of that. I mean, that was Josh's story.
Oh,
he was a summer intern and stayed on.
Yeah. Maybe this is like something that I feel like Fusion, there's like that skill like diagram thing. You can look up what your skill set in Fusion is. I feel like they should find a way to like turn that into like a LinkedIn thing where like you're trying to hire and there's like a way to like have a job board of people with these badges of like capability or something. It doesn't even have to be that so much. It's just like Fusion should have some form of like a job board, or I don't know. I guess it doesn't have to be that specific, but
yeah, no, I know what you mean. Yeah. Well, anything else on your list? Optional parameters.
Crickets.
I do have this. The optional parameter trick I sent you a video of. It's something that I've been trying to work out forever. Mostly the cabinet scenario, and it still fails pretty drastically in that situation, and that's primarily because of how Fusion doesn't allow. So basically, like when you're trying to make like a pocket cup into a door, and it goes in one time, and then if you change it to the other side, it can't not be there the second time. Like when you change it, it causes an error in the timeline. It's like space-time continuum of Facebook of like, man, that's a better title. So, as I showed you, and I can barely describe, as I can barely describe to you in my delirium at the end of that day, I figured out how to make a very parametric, optional style jaw set for a vise, where you could move the stock around depending on whether you did a binary of ones and zeros. It would be center aligned or left, or if you turned it into the parallels instead of on top and mighty bytes of the vise, it would shift that down and put it in the right position. And all to help me to figure out how to do this a little bit better, but I want to figure out faster ways to do setups that doesn't include rebuilding all of this every time or having a bunch of different files. So I'm hoping at some point I will find the words to describe this, because it's very confusing to me still, and the words don't come out right.
Yeah, it's such a hard thing to like communicate, particularly in an audio program.
With video is hard.
Exactly. But yeah, that screen share you sent me last week, I think was a leap forward for me in terms of that min-max parameter use.
Yeah.
And I made, like in my little hacky experiments, which I sent back to you, like I immediately made progress in terms of that sort of binary switching stuff. So yeah, we're getting there.
But that should work all right, I think. If you can ever get it to work with features, if you can pattern a feature or mirror a feature, that's like the most foolproof way to like make it work usually. But the also frustrating problem is you can't pattern or mirror into other components, seemingly. That fails too. There's just a lot of ways you can fail at this still.
It'd be nice to be able to control suppressions with parameters somehow too. That's something I've run into.
There may be a future of that happening.
Say no more. I'm going to go and see what's catching fire in my wall. So it sounds like there's a transformer that's about to explode in my drywall.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Run.
And
don't walk. I'm hopefully going to plan the mill, make more aluminum parts. I figured out my reamer, thanks to the Discord's help. That was pretty fun. Make freaking spot on holes now. They're within a thou. It's very fun. What did I say?
Just reamer is a funny word.
Does that mean something different to you there? Tell me later.
I'll tell you later.
All right. See you, man.
Have a good day. Bye.
I didn't know you used that like the British do.